olive oil is a popular choice for people wanting to activate their full potential. Improved sleep, faster recovery and more energy are just a few of the amazing comments received from our customers who take a spoonful a day. Make C60 oil a part of your daily routine and see what it can do for you. Activate your potential today at thec60company.com.
I'm going to start this week with, well, the obvious story because it's dominated everything, and that's the coronavirus in China. And just to show you how easy it is for the few to control the world, some people apparently believe that this coronavirus is connected to the beer of the same name. But I've got some news for them. It's actually not the cause of the coronavirus. It's the cause of Lyme disease. It's all those limes they stick in the top of the bottle, you know. So that's sorted that out. And it's very important that people don't jump immediately when something happens, particularly in the alternative media, and say, this is it, this is what's happened. Because there are sinister reasons why things happen, and there are things that happen because they happen through a series of events. And so it's very important that you hold back and you let the information start to circulate from different sources, and then you start to see the pattern. And we don't know yet if this virus is as bad as they are claiming, because, you know, you'd think the world was going to end if you read news reports about it. I mean, it's got to the point where I've been seeing newspapers putting out like seat plans of aircraft and pointing out where the safest place to sit is on an aircraft, so you've got the least chance of getting this virus from somebody. And where it goes from here, we don't know. But at the moment, the figures they're talking about, we have to compare with a Chinese population of 1.5 billion. If you look at it from another angle, and like I say, we don't know where this is going to go. We don't know how destructive it is. We only have what the authorities are telling us, which is the whole key point. Authority has, in whatever country, a monumental record, minute by minute, of lying to us and misleading us. So whatever they claim has to be put big time on the back burner until we actually see the way that things are moving. What you can do, however, is look at the pattern in general, in theme. Because I've been writing in the books for decades that one of the examples of what I call problem, reaction, solution, create the problem, then offer the solution. So you transform society with a lot of people cheering you on who wouldn't normally, because, oh, we've got a problem to sort out here. Whereas if the same actions were taken without the problem, then people would say, what you're doing, this is a fascist dictatorship, this is Orwell. So creating the problem to offer the solution and transform society as a result is a classic technique of this global cult that I expose. And I've been saying in the books, and I'm not alone, claiming a monopoly on that, that one of the ways that society can be transformed in terms of an Orwellian state is by a pandemic. And it's got every element that this cabal, this cult, wants to impose upon humanity. First of all, because in the end, the whole agenda is about psychology. It's about manipulating human psychology to elicit human behavior that suits the agenda. So, one of the greatest fears, if not the greatest fear, that people have is fear of the unknown, which includes fear of death. So, any kind of fear will encourage people, trigger people to look for something to save them from what they fear. And if that's fear of death, this is where the whole power of doctors and the big pharma cartel comes from. If it's fear of death, then you know that if you give people the impression that their life could be in danger or their family's life could be in danger from a pandemic of this virus, then you know that vast numbers of people are going to look to authority to protect them and save them. And that means doing what authority and accepting, supporting what authority says is necessary to save them. And we're seeing in this Chinese virus, coronavirus scenario, exactly that happening. So there's lockdown, they say, in China. I've seen reports that 50 million people in China are currently quarantined in 16 cities, so I read. And a lot of people will support that because fear of the virus has taken over their psychology. And now we're seeing, we've got cases in the United States, we've got cases here, we've got cases there. And so they're moving out this fear of the virus into more and more countries. And like I say, we'll have to see where this goes, because we've had the SARS virus scare, we've had the Ebola virus scare, we're all gonna die. But funnily enough, we never did. That is not to say that eventually is planned a pandemic which will have devastating effects and therefore will justify devastating solutions, the destruction of human freedom, impose vaccinations, etc., and travel bans, lockdowns, as we're seeing in China. And so this whole pandemic hysteria, which has been so fueled by the media, as usual, is of enormous benefit to this cabal in justifying transformations in society of an Orwellian nature that it has long planned. It also brings about the opportunity to introduce a vaccine. It's apparently already in the pipeline. I am surprised that will persuade people that if they have the vaccine, then they're safer. And that's one step from, well, to save everyone and make everyone safer, we must make the vaccine compulsory. And then the next question is, what the hell is in it? When a vaccine of a mandatory type, even a non-mandatory type, gives access to the body for the state, the authorities. So what the hell else is in it? And then you look at the fact that 3 months ago, there was a simulation of a coronavirus outbreak that was run by the World Economic Forum. This is the Davos operation, which is the gathering of the 1% and those directing the very agenda for global Orwellian control that I'm talking about. Also involved was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And as I've said in the books many times, if Bill Gates is funding it, it's bad for humanity. If Bill Gates is involved in it, it's bad for humanity. And the list to confirm that is very long indeed. And also involved was Johns Hopkins University. And they ran 3 months before this virus scare a, quote, pandemic simulation. It was called Event 201 and specifically focused on the coronavirus. It played out a scenario in which the virus spread in South America. It was blamed on animal to human transmissions. Well, this coronavirus in China has been blamed on animal-human transmissions. Eating bats and snakes is the official line. But in the area of China where this virus supposedly emerged, Wuhan, that's home to 2 Chinese government biohazard laboratories dealing with the very viruses, etc., that we're talking about. Now that, not to put too fine a point on it and to state the obvious, is a bloody big coincidence. So the conclusion of this Bill Gates World Economic Forum exercise was that national governments were nowhere near ready in dealing with something like this. And the simulation projected 65 million deaths worldwide. Now, if you reach that figure, by the time you got anywhere close to that figure, human freedom would be kaput. So this is an article at the Activist Post website, which is saying Event 201 played out almost exactly as it's been happening in China. some very disingenuous or perhaps rather stupid people, the article says, have been arguing that this kind of thing is, quote, normal, claiming that we are lucky that the elites have been running simulations in advance in order to save us from this coronavirus outbreak. Really? These are the people, the very people, who have an agenda for a massive reduction in the global population. These are the people and the families going back that were behind eugenics. These are the people, the 1%, who are so hoarding the wealth and manipulating the world economy that they are causing, by their actions every single day, stunning numbers of people to depart this world through hunger, through disease. And these are the very same people who we're asked to believe were setting up this scenario, this simulation, because out of the goodness of their hearts, they wanted to protect people. And this is the same group, Bill Gates not least, in the front line, that are pushing vaccinations on people worldwide, not least in so-called developing countries. Why? Because apparently they care so much about the poor and needy in developing countries. So I think we can just about push aside the fact that this simulation was run by the 1% epicenter of the World Economic Forum and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and so on, that this simulation was run to benefit humanity and out of empathy with humanity. No way. So, we look then at this extraordinary coincidence. And not only that, as this article rightly points out, you look at the fact that before almost every major crisis event and terrorist attack and people going crazy with guns, all of it, for decades now, the authorities have been running simulations for exactly that event right before it happened. I have described, detailed the background in the books to so many of these things. It's extraordinary as a recurring theme that there is a scenario run by the authorities over something, and then that something happens in the place where the scenario is being played out. How many times have simulations of gun attacks suddenly turned into the real thing? So this Davos cabal simulation is clearly something that has to be taken big time into consideration when we look at what this coronavirus hysteria is really all about. And the other thing, of course, is that if this thing keeps going on and does keep expanding, well, it's going to have a big effect on the global economy. Already we're seeing flights cancelled to China, and obviously if what we're being told is true about what's happening in China, then it's going to have a big effect on the Chinese economy, which is absolutely fundamental now to the global economy. And it just so happens that the same cabal at Davos want to transform the global economic system into a centralized system that they control even more than they do now. We're seeing climate change being used as an excuse to do that. Prince Charles recently at Davos made a speech calling for the world economy to be transformed to save the world from climate change. We have the Pope, another asset of this cabal, saying the same. And to transform the economy, you need economic collapse, really, because then once the status quo has collapsed, you can rebuild the status quo in the image that you want. This is classic problem, reaction, solution. So these happenings in China over this virus have every box ticked for what this cabal wants. And we need to look at those events in that light to really understand the implications for humanity that potentially, we have to see where it goes, potentially have catastrophic consequences for human freedom if this goes on. And, you know, I've quoted many times a guy called Dr. Richard Day, big-time Rockefeller family insider, who was an executive of Planned Parenthood, which started out in the eugenics movement with the very same families I'm talking about. And he addressed pediatricians in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1969 and told them how the world was going to change. In effect, because what he represented was going to change it. And the accuracy of his predictions in the light of present day is absolutely fantastic. I published them in length in a book called Phantom Self. And one of the things he talked about was injecting diseases in vaccination programs and using diseases to justify the transformation that they want. So we need to watch this like a hawk with a telescope, really, and not fall into fear. Because fear, the moment you fall into fear, you start giving your power away. That'll be the bloody day. And of course, one of the organizations apparently involved in this simulation, so I read, was Johnson & Johnson, which is one of the cabal asset corporations that is involved in developing this vaccination. And there's one other thing that I'll mention about this, which again, it's all psychology. When there's a few of you and you want to control billions, then you have to get the billions to control themselves. And again, because of the nature of human programming, perceptual programming, where, you know, I've traveled all over the world. I've been everywhere, man, and all that stuff. And no matter what the culture, no matter what the dominant religion, you see the same press enter reactions everywhere, where something happens and you pretty much know how people are going to respond to it, just like pressing enter on a computer. And what happens when you frighten people into fearing health consequences, which comes, of course, from fear of death, is that you put them in survival mode. And survival mode means repelling all borders and possibilities that might threaten that survival. Again, the part of the brain that kicks in with this stuff is the reptilian brain. And so we have this story, unbelievably predictable, which again fits in to this whole scenario of centralized dictatorship using the population to control itself. The headline says, "The coronavirus vigilantes. Chinese villagers dig up roads and arm themselves with spears to prevent Wuhan residents from escaping into their communities." Villages around the epicenter of China's coronavirus outbreak are flocking to prevent residents from the largely quarantined province from fleeing into their land. Videos and pictures circulating on social media purport to show frightened locals living near the border of this, where the outbreak started, resorting to various methods, including destroying roads and using weapon-wielding guards in a desperate bid to stop people escaping from the other side. And this is what happens because fear becomes hysteria. And what happens when you are in an emotional, in this case, fear-based state? You stop thinking straight. And so lots of things happen which wouldn't be happening if you were not consumed by fear and the perceived need to survive. So like I say, the numbers so far, I'm not saying they're not going to rise and rise and rise. We don't know that. But at the moment, the numbers involved, the number of people who've died from this, when you compare it with a Chinese population of 1.5 billion, the hysteria being promoted in the media is absolutely not justified. And it has all the hallmarks of a problem reaction solution to either drive this whole Orwellian global agenda or to be another stepping stone on the road to it. And we shall have to see which it is. But when I look at it, from 30 years of tracking this cult, red flags and bright flashing red lights are going off in every direction.